Welcome to the fifth day of our 11th week of gathering like this on what started out in one world and has since then progressed through many different worlds, so to speak, many different events, all of which are very much in play. And it is altogether simply raising the level of uncertainty, opportunity, profound sadness and rage and grief, and at the same time, unimaginable opening and possibility, depending on how we are in relationship with this moment on this planet. If there's any kind of artificial imposition of an idea of meditation that you notice arising, simply let it be and allow this moment to be as extraordinary as it is by also allowing it to be as ordinary as it is. Throwing out the thought that you're meditating and simply give yourself over to this moment with full awareness. And realizing, recognizing your completeness, your wholeness in the very gesture of taking your seat in this way, whether you're sitting, standing on your head, doesn't matter. And abandoning any identification with your own thought stream, which isn't yours, of course. And really isn't even a stream, but simply weather patterns in the mind that have their own incredibly complex dynamics, like weather patterns do. Much of it at the edge of chaos or at times of high stress, far beyond the edge of chaos. And resting in awareness, right here, right now. All of us together, and all of us embodied. So no separation, but in that sense, still contained within the envelope of your particular windows, and there are multiple ones, senses, all of them on the world. So we're whole and part of ever and ever larger circles or nestings of wholeness. And if there's any moment in the arc of your life where you have the opportunity to be free, it's here now. And it may be that in realizing it, there's only this moment, this breath, this sitting here, this being human, as I've been saying for weeks. The miracle of mindfulness, as Thich Nhat Hanh called it, the beauty of awareness embodied, inhabited, enacted, totally portable, not just about sitting, it's about living our way into each moment while we have the chance. However scary, however terrifying, however rending, heart-rending. Frustrating. And not simply around any personal pronouns, except for maybe we. And maybe not knowing, excuse me, and maybe not knowing who exactly we is referring to within the mystery of our basic humanity and profound interconnectedness. A radical act of love and sanity, right here, right now, underneath thinking, underneath all words. Just this. Just this. If it makes any sense to you to ask, what is the size of your heart in this particular moment, then you might investigate down that vector of the question itself. How big, how inclusive is your heart? Not talking about sentimentality. A direct recognition of the scope of your love embodied sitting here right in this moment. The love affair, whatever those words mean to you or reveal to you or point out to you. And then looking, listening, investigating underneath thought. And welcoming whatever arises, letting it register also without big narrative. How is it in the body? How is what we call heart expressing in what we call mind right in this moment? In your life right here and right now. Or you'll never have a better opportunity to wake up and give yourself over to the full dimensionality of who you already are. And since it's always now, this is like an enormously spacious gift. We don't even give it to ourselves. It's simply something we can avail ourselves of because it's infinitely available. That is the nature of awareness. Of undistracted, unfabricated, non-meditation, pure awareness. Knowing itself, embracing itself with no narrative. Sure, narratives will sneak in and come in, and many of them will be really useful to us. But for now, underscore, now, just this. No words. Underneath name and form. Underneath no name, no form. So here we are once again in this mind-blowingly miraculous community of emergence under conditions of emergency, all puns intended, all pandemics included. And I'll keep saying it until we go off the air, so to speak, that there's no end to the meditation practice and no beginning either. So bells to signal the end of a period of formal guidance not necessary, because the guidance is really just those fingers pointing at the moon, the signposts saying San Francisco or Boston, and you don't climb on the signpost and think you've gotten there. And in this domain, there's no there to get to. There's only here. So you can just slice the T off of there. There's a kind of gentle reinforcement or reminder that we live at the crossroads of here and now. And this is where all the fecundity, all the potential, all the creativity, imagination, and action, transformative learning, growing, healing, realizing happens. So in the spirit of what I said a few days ago, I'm going to continue to be recommending things to read for those of you who want an extended reading list. Maybe this will all get written down in some form that will be more like accessible online than just me holding up books, but I want to hold them up anyway. This won't take very long, but just to point out that my wonderful colleague, Rhonda McGee, who has been on this call any number of times, has been part of our community from the beginning, wrote a wonderful book called The Inner Work of Racial Justice, the subtitle of which is Healing Ourselves and Transforming Our Communities Through Mindfulness. And whether you're in the United States or you're in some other country, this may be incredibly relevant to you as a door into seeing things that are sort of, we're very easily blind to, in terms of the ways that we've been entrained into racializing groups where race itself is a fabrication, but such an enduring one that's created so much pain and suffering over so many centuries that we need each other to point things out, to wake up, because we're so entrained we don't even know that we don't know, but that we have digested and incorporated racist perspectives so much. And you can become much more mindful of them when you notice like very fleeting thoughts that might come through your mind, not necessarily in a sitting posture in your own house, but when you're out in the world and encountering all sorts of different kinds of people. Another book that I mentioned by the same author is the book I recommended that's called Stamped from the Beginning, especially for Americans about and for Europeans about the history of slavery and the enslavement of Africans at the absolute foundation and before the foundation of the United States of America. Is this second book by Ibram Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist. where he's making the argument, I've mentioned it before, that just saying, well, I'm not a racist, it doesn't cut it, because there's a certain kind of blindness and a certain kind of entrainment into a particular kind of self-righteousness that is not adequate to the levels of suffering that are so easily ignored if you happen to have white skin, in my country at least. And so he's arguing that not being a racist is not good enough. You have to actually, we have to actually be anti-racist. And this is a very, very personal book about his own development. I learned recently that he's going to be coming to Boston University to take a position there, I believe, in the history department, which is a really major coup for Boston University. Then Jennifer Eberhardt from Stanford University's book, Biased, Uncovering the Hidden Prejudice That Shapes What We See, Think, and Do. A staggering work by a really unbelievably creative and insightful scientist who has really made her life's work the study of implicit bias, the bias that we don't even know we have. And then a fellow who I met not long ago named Justin Michael Williams, who is actually an amazing young person who is a singer, songwriter, performer, meditation teacher, a book called Stay Woke. And the subtitle is A Meditation Guide for the Rest of Us. And this is really quite a remarkable book that our colleagues at Sounds True have put out very recently. I think it's particularly juicy for young people, but for all of us, really revelatory. And there's a lot of online stuff, including music and ways to bring the book to life. But the book is a very unusual book in the level of what I guess we could call I'm blanking on the word for it. Doesn't matter. Come back to it at some point. But the quality of all of the basic elements of the book. And then somebody pointed out to me in our small group yesterday that we do not need to buy books from Amazon. Amazon is making out like, pirates during this COVID pandemic for obvious reasons, but that we can support local bookstores and in particular Black bookstores. And she mentioned in Oakland, California, the Marcus bookstores, and we can actually buy books from them. So a lot of these books can probably be had through the Marcus bookstore or other bookstores. You can find these online, but where we're actually letting our money in some sense speak more clearly by supporting organizations that are just really being decimated by the economic collapse of society in the wake of the national shutdown, at least in the United States. So just wanted to mention those, and I will continue as the next couple of weeks unfold to try really hard not to overload you with stuff, because reading, while it's really wonderful and may, sort of help you develop a framework for understanding the real work, unless you read it as a kind of form of meditation, which I hope you will, then it's second order stuff. The real work is living moment by moment, and it's hard to know how much time anybody will have for reading. And a lot of these books are big and wonderful, but I do want to recommend them. They've been incredibly revealing and illuminating and educating to me, and I like to just share what I've learned, from where I've learned it. So then I'm acutely aware that, Soren and I dropped this kind of trying to find a word that's not going to have a military connotation to it. But we basically just announced that we're going to bring this, what was a mitigation retreat and is now a life itself, full catastrophe retreat, to a formal closing 2 weeks from today on Friday, the 26th of June, and that will basically be at the end of 13 weeks. We're at the end of 11 right now. And that doesn't mean it's going to be the end of anything, but I thought that today, in addition to asking questions of people, want to ask the usual kinds of questions that people have been asking about practice and the interface with life, if you want to also include something that goes beyond sentiment around the loss of this, but really, if you feel that there might be a loss, and I personally, what am I going to do after these things are over? It's like, it's not that I won't find things, to use these hours, but they have been so rich that I want you to know I'm attached to it. Okay, no question about it. I'm really attached to it. It's one that, and that's okay as long as we're not attached to our attachment or imprisoned by it. Then it can actually give rise to whatever wants to emerge in the distributive creativity and imagination of all of us here together. And that's not going anywhere. That's boundless. That's going to be here forever, even if we never come online together. But I'm sure we will be coming online together many times between now and, decades from now. So over to you, Soren.
Great.
And feel free to, of course, I want to invite you to add whatever you want to add around this whole transition thing.
I think it's just good to mention that there are some people from our community who are building kind of a hub and a place so that we can kind of stay connected via a map and via other means. And so we'll have more information about that later down the line, but just so you know that that's kind of in the work. And it's actually beautiful because it's coming from some of the members in the community. So there will be a kind of a hub, if you will, for people to see who else has been here, connect, learn more about other things. So that we will announce that hopefully in the next week or two as the form of that becomes more clear. So with that said, again, apologies, we can't get to everybody who has their hand raised. And if you do get chosen, your image will be projected not only here, but on YouTube, and also stay here and on YouTube. And I'm seeing Sinead from Ireland pops up on the list. And you are, I believe you're unmuted, Sinead.
Oh, great. Thanks, Soren. Thank you. Thanks, Jon and Soren and Jon. And well, my response to the formal close of it is all good things must come to an end. And I'm taking with me what I've got out of it and really glad for what I have got and not for what I won't get if it continued on further, if you know what I mean. So
I love what you're saying, and I know what you mean.
It's always been my approach, I always wanted more children, but I always said, well, be grateful for what you have, not for what you haven't. So so thanks for that. And I'm calling from just outside Belfast, in the north of Ireland. And yeah, my question is around the interface of practice and life, and this term mindfulness that I can't remember his name. He was on a couple of nights ago and he talked about once we name it as a thing, it becomes a thing. And I'm recently a mindfulness meditation teacher, having taken early retirement from the sector of community work for over 35 years. And I suppose what my struggle is, and you did mention, confusion, and we can bring that onto the mat with us in terms of COVID. And this is something I've been bringing on to the mat with me. And I just really would like your reflections on it in terms of where mindfulness ends and life begins, as in the whole of our life. I have done a lot of contemplative retreats and would have read awareness around Tony DeMello and people like that years and years ago. But I think what really has confused me this past week has been, a seminar that I was at, and they said, what brought you to mindfulness? And I got very confused, in terms of what I define mindfulness as being. Some of the richest moments that have made my heart sing the most have been in meeting people of difference, and seeing the pain and the prejudice that is brought to life on people in terms of their ethnicity or color, sexuality, whether they're Catholic or Protestant or Hindu or Muslim or whatever. And it brought me into years of working in a community where I did become an inclusion officer for equity, diversity and interdependence, and have now been training in mindfulness. So how big is our hearts? Well, our hearts can be so big enough to make us ill trying to do as much. But I suppose my question, Jon, is in terms of, answering that question, what brought me to mindfulness as a program. And I know I was brought to MBSR through illness, but in terms of mindfulness to life, from I was a very young age, being exposed to people from all sorts of different life conditions. And my first job was working in a children's home, which I often said was the best grounding for me in life, to see the types of different families and, taken for granted coming up in a family of love and care and nothing complicated. And the lives of young people that I would have seen were hugely different. And so my awareness would have been raised through living and being with those people. And I was fortunate to be with young people in New York, and they took me on their peer program to Rikers Island when all the young people in Rikers Island were all Black.
Explain to people what Rikers Island is for those who may not know New York City.
Yeah, Rikers Island is a prison for younger people. And I went over as a community worker and met up with a group of young people that were doing peer education on Rikers Island, which was the prison for young people. And we went into the prison to do the peer education drama, and the last young people to one in Rikers Island was Black. And that awareness through experience just begged the question, it's just in front of your eyes, there's something structurally wrong, because this just cannot be the way of life. And just listening to the stories are not the stories that are perpetrated in the papers, they're the real life stories. So basically my question is, now having moved into the mindfulness community, in terms of expressing what mindfulness is and what mindfulness isn't, certainly in an MBSR course, I can get that, I can totally understand that. In this forum where we're looking more at the interplay between mindfulness, meditation and life, I just would like to hear your reflections on that.
Okay, well, you said a lot. If I'm not mistaken, Soren, is it true that you worked on Rikers Island for a bit?
Yeah, at for the young people section, actually.
Yeah, the young people section.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, it's a prison in the East River that is just a hellhole on earth, and very, very hard to transform. And this is what we do with our youth. So the levels of pain and suffering that you're pointing to, and it's certainly not just on that one island in the East River, it's in Ireland, it's in Northern Ireland. I mean, the hell realms on this planet are everywhere in a certain way, and very often the children are, suffer the most from these kinds of levels of ignorance and, you know, ignorance taken to such a degree that could only be called institutional evil. It's a big question, and I don't really have anything particular to say beyond what I've been, offering here. And that is that mindfulness is really a love affair with what's deepest and best in ourselves, not in a sort of narcissistic, self-centered way, but in exactly the opposite. And it's obvious. I mean, in the way you are speaking, the emotion that's behind what you're saying is that you yourself have been engaged in this love affair in whatever ways that you have been able to for decades. And there's a rending element to it because you can't force the world to be other than it is. But at the same time, your presence can be tremendously healing to even one person. That's already made a huge difference in the world. And if you can also have some kind of structural difference in, make a difference in terms of like the system or the institutions that perpetrate this kind of thing and the mindsets that actually develop those institutions and the laws that support it, then that's the process of healing that we're all collaborating in at this moment. And there's certain moments on the planet that are what you might call kind of, what the theoretical physicists might call wormholes, that you can actually, drop in to particular moments and make much larger differences in the world than at other times when things seem to be in a certain kind of stasis. And no matter how much you give voice to issues of justice or compassion or kindness, the world just does not seem to respond. Now seems to be a moment when, because of the pandemic and the recognition that we're all in this together in a certain way, I think there are entirely new ways in which your heart and all of our hearts will find to do not what someone else's work is, not what someone else's karmic assignment is, so to speak, or not what your karmic assignment of 5 minutes or 20 years ago was, but what is your karmic assignment? What is my karmic assignment right in this moment? And you don't have to have a conceptual answer to that. All you need to do is hold that question and let the love speak to you in the timeless, so that you don't have an agenda or a time frame for acting in the direction that you want to take action in. And that kind of selfless commitment, it doesn't burn out. There's a big difference between empathy. People often speak of compassion fatigue, but it's not compassion if it's truly understood and embodied doesn't fatigue because there's no one there to fatigue. But empathy, carrying the feeling of the suffering of others, that we can only tolerate to a certain degree. So we need empathy that sort of is held in mindfulness and heartfulness, and out of that arises the instinct to, the impulse to actually carry some of the burden in one way or another, but there's no you to carry the burden, so it actually doesn't fatigue. And we share it all together. And that's one of the things that I think we're feeling on this, in this Sangha, in this community, is that we are truly all in it together. But that's one thing when you think it, but it's another thing when you can see it in the faces of people, even on thumbnail, sort of things on our screens. It's kind of remarkable. So one, I just want to thank you for your the expressions of both pain and possibility that you've given voice to, and thanks for being part of this community. I mean, your country, if you are from Northern Ireland, has seen plenty of suffering, plenty of othering. So, we have lessons to learn here, and lessons that we can learn from each other. And so it doesn't matter what your definition of mindfulness is. What really matters is that you're living a life of integrity, ethics, caring, and that in some sense you have befriended your own mind and heart to the point of view that you don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah, that's really helpful, John, because I was struggling with the concepts, but the heart speaks to me the easiest.
Throw out the concepts. I mean, they're just concepts.
Yeah.
And I tell you, a lot of reporters and people say, look, I love your concept of mindfulness. And I go, oh my God, where do I have to start? Because as soon as people think of it as a concept, they've already killed it. Yeah. It's not a concept. It's a way of being. And if people need more, it's a way of being in wise relationship with the actuality of things. And what does wisdom mean? Well, it means ethics, and it means compassion, and it means insight.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And no one has a lock on it. No one has a monopoly on that. Yeah. No one.
Thanks, John. And thanks everyone else for listening. Thanks, Soren.
Thank you, Sinead.
Next I'm seeing Laura. Laura, I cannot, oh, you don't have your, let's see. You don't have your video on, Laura, but let's see. Oh, I think you might now.
It's the Golden Gate Bridge.
Well, go ahead, Laura.
Speaking to us. You going to manifest?
Oh, looks like your internet connection might be hard, Laura, but we see the Golden Gate Bridge and I see an image.
Yeah, welcome to California.
Hi there. Oh, you're coming into being for us.
That's right. Well, I am healed. Can you tell from my face?
You're in San Francisco?
Yes.
Welcome.
We can see you now. Welcome.
Okay. I just want to express amazing gratitude. I am healed. This gathering allowed me to show up raw. I'm even scared to look at the tape when I expressed my pain. It was very complex. I couldn't put it into words. Like I said, English is my 11th language.
Wow.
Yesterday, I got to celebrate my 26th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
At a cemetery. You have to know the cemetery to appreciate it. It's actually a historic, beautiful place in Atlanta with the founders of this city. And what my daughters came up with the idea, it was really kind of spooky, but serene. And she played a few pieces with her acoustic guitar. She was celebrating her 24th birthday because she gate crashed on our second wedding anniversary. That's my daughter, who's a filmmaker who produced Godspeed, about mother and daughter. I just want to say that's not about me. It was inspired by Moonlight.
Godspeed is
yeah,
the name of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put it in the link.
That'd be great.
And also the love of my life that I'm crazy about. I will still cross the ocean from Africa to America for him. But keep in mind, that was not like the Coming to America movie. It was a different movie. To save you time, George Floyd, Say Your Name, allowed me to say my father's name for the first time, who was brutally, slowly, over a decade, killed at Robben Island by digging limestone. That's why the cemetery was perfect.
Mm.
My brother, brutally slaughtered by police brutality in South Africa. So, Say Your Name is a global pandemic. It's not American. He was in South Africa in a very small town. And he was hated for his brilliance and speaking his mind. Because 40 years ago, you do not talk back to police. And he was constricted until he couldn't breathe anymore. And the police had the guards to come to my house to inform my mom, who obviously was paralyzed, and I had to go identify him. I was only 20. My daughter, who's the youngest one, I was her age. I mean, who's equal to such a task? So that's not all. My sister, after a 12-hour shift in a trauma unit in a white hospital, and she was Black, obviously, slaughtered by the ambulatory driver after she got into a car accident, thrown 5 feet up, uprooted the telephone pole to land and punch her lungs, begged for oxygen and blood. And they told her, this is our unit. Your unit is at the hospital and we know you. They were white. Somehow, as the universe and God will have it, somebody jumped into the ambulance with her, rode past the hospital, which was 15 minutes away from where the accident happened, went to the township. So I'll explain that later in a book. 3 hours after we've been waiting at the hospital, she arrived. 5 minutes later, she was gone. So 3 family members. I just didn't know how I was going to deal with that. But this gathering allowed me to have an experience of the sukha and the dukkha. The height of joy and the dance in deep darkness for gold and diamond to come out. And I feel enriched. I'm elated. I'm in a state of equanimity. So I want to thank you. That's all.
That's that's enough. Laura, may I respond to you?
Yes.
It feels like such an honor and privilege to just receive the history of your experience on this planet and in South Africa, and the unimaginable levels of suffering and loss and cruelty and unnecessary inhumanity. Compounded, or actually not compounded, but juxtaposed with the fact that you're here and your smiling face, and yet you've been practicing with us and expressing this kind of gratitude. And even, if you'll pardon my putting it this way, knowing the difference between dukkha and sukha, a word that I have not used, I just want to acknowledge how you're sharing these levels of unimaginable loss and grief are in some sense a profoundly meaningful gift to those of us who you've allowed to hear something that is so intimate and so horrible, and that you have been carrying. And so thank you for letting us, even to a tiniest little degree, also carry it a bit, and if that in some sense, just makes the burden even that infinitesimally lighter for you. That is, in some sense, really your gift to us, much more than it is our gift to you. But it's
That's profound. But let me show you my inspiration and I'll bow out. Can you see these guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Is that Nelson Mandela?
Yeah, that's Nelson Mandela and that's Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, those are your
And that's my grandmother who taught me everything I know.
oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. God bless.
Oh, listen, deep bow and just tons of love.
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Donna Estes, for introducing me. Donna got me here. Thank you, Donna.
Donna.
Okay. And how long have you been with us? Just so I know.
I think halfway through, probably.
Yeah, this is, of course, beyond time and space, so it's immeasurable. But it
was just what I needed because I have fired a lot of counselors. Trust me.
Yeah, well, we're not counselors.
Yeah, I don't like telling stories when I'm 3-year-old because no one can handle it. So
yeah.
But you guys continue the work, and my intention is to use my pain and my joy through dance, music, film, and books, and my company to tell the story from an African eye and heart.
You know what? We would be so blessed by having by having that available for us to experience.
It's coming. Just stay tuned. It's
take
coming.
Your time. The creative impulse cannot be hurried. But
Absolutely.
when it is done, it
Yes.
will be a real gift, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's a lifetime. Yeah. By the way, I never met my father because he was in Robben Island.
Yeah. I did go to Robben Island at some point, and I also crossed paths with Desmond Tutu.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you go to eat at the restaurant next to his house?
Wow. Well, if I get your email, which you can send to Soren, I'll send you a photo of myself and Desmond Tutu.
Please do that. I'll include it in the book.
No, don't do that. But
well, if I have your permission, because
okay, but I'll just send it to you because I wasn't in your country for very long, but I was so blown away by what I experienced there.
There's magic. I think God lives in South Africa. Yeah. Thank you. Let me not take other people's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Be well.
Yeah, thank you.
We're about 2 minutes to the hour, Jon. One more?
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay. I know, Cece, you've had your hand up for a long time, and you've patiently waited.
I must say to you, Soren, actually, that I've been here right from the beginning, and I think in the very first group, I asked you to ask Jon something, and I've really kind of thought, oh God, I really shouldn't have done that, but I had no idea that this was going to last as long as it has done, and yeah, I have. So thank you very, very much for giving me an opportunity now. Jon, I wanted to ask you about meditation and mindfulness and tinnitus. I have quite chronic tinnitus.
Explain what tinnitus is for people who don't know the word.
I have a continual ringing in my ears and have done now for 10 years. And it is it's almost the sound that I have in my ears is like a million pins falling constantly throughout the day. And so the word still and the word silent are, because it's like a movement in my head constantly and noise in my head constantly. I'm very lucky. I did an 8-week mindfulness course in the Royal Hospital, the Royal London Hospital, Ear, Nose and Throat Hospital with Dr. Lawrence McKenna. I did mindfulness then, and I've done several mindfulness courses since. I just wanted to ask you about that. And I know kind of chronic pain I just wanted to ask you about that. But I also wanted to ask you, in the book, The Sound of Silence by, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Is it Jon Sumedeo?
Jon Sumedeo.
Sumedeo.
Yeah.
In the chapter, it was actually, the book was recommended by Chris Cullen in London.
Okay, you know Chris?
I do, yes.
Okay, he's incredible.
He's the one I've done.
As is Jon Sumedeo.
Well, I mean, it was just, it was an extraordinary kind of, I've done the .B program with Chris, and I've done silent retreats with him. And, but in the book, The Sound of Silence, in the chapter called The Sound of Silence, he talks about that when people meditate a lot, they can hear a ringing in their ears, which some people might think of as tinnitus, but that sound is outside. It's not in their head. And I just wanted to ask if that almost reframe was resisting.
I don't know. I have the book over here, so I will check out what Jon Sumedeo had to say on that score. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So you have a lot of practice experience, formal meditation retreat practice.
Yes.
So when you're sitting,
yes,
there is this continual dropping of a million pins.
Yes.
Like whoosh.
Yes.
And it never goes away.
Never is a word I'm not comfortable. I wouldn't say never, but it is. I mean, I'm ringing away now, so
yeah.
I can. And in the book, what he says is that, you know, with tinnitus, it doesn't matter if you're underwater. It doesn't matter if people are talking. It doesn't matter if I'm watching a film.
Always here.
It's above all that. Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I'd have to give that a lot more thought because I don't actually have the experience of tinnitus. So I don't have a kind of first person, except every once in a while, I think it's kind of in the domain of the normal that all of us at a certain point have a certain kind of something like that. But thank goodness it actually goes away. And when it's tinnitus, you know, then it doesn't go away and it becomes really intrusive. The only thing that I can say, you know, well, I was going to ask you, when you're on retreat,
yes,
is it as intrusive as when you're not on retreat? And are there moments when it's not that it goes away, but that it's not a problem anymore in a certain way? There's no barrier between that and wakefulness.
You know, I did a 10-day silent retreat, and on the second day, I just out of the blue, it went, and it kind of, I could almost feel it dropping through my body.
Mm-hmm.
And just aside from that, I have to say, I wake up with you in the morning, Jon, and I go to bed with you in the evening because I've done the mindful yoga as well every morning, and it's been a lifesaver, your 1 hour, and I've recommended it to everyone in any group I've been in. I've said, do it. It's the 45-minute.
Yeah. The series one guided meditation.
Yes, it's been wonderful. But on that retreat, it went down. But I suppose in a sense, and there's an anxiety there that I'm attached to that. I would so like that to happen again.
Okay, but that's an interesting place to sort of place your attention.
Yeah.
Because that's something that is fungible. There's grasping.
Yes.
Okay. And then there's the knowing of grasping, awareness of the impulse to hold on because it's so desirable. I mean, you so want the peace of silence underneath the sound that. So this is where I'm asking you, is there some space here in your own experience of practice where there's a difference between what you're calling the tinnitus and the awareness of what you're calling, or the direct perception of the hearing?
There is space.
Okay, well, then that would be, and Achan Sumedo talks about this too. He's like big into space. So that would be the place where I would really focus in without any attempt to get rid of anything, but with a tremendous sort of almost scientific curiosity and interest, like as if the meditation practice and retreat was a laboratory and you were just going to sort of impersonally investigate, what is this? And is the tinnitus you, or is what we're calling the tinnitus a phenomenon that when held in a certain way no longer is a source of any form of suffering?
Yes.
We won't talk about whether it goes away or not, because that's so linear and so object subject kind of thing. But if we're talking about the potential for liberation from the suffering that the thought stream and the sound itself, when we get caught up in attaching, liking and disliking, that's a huge domain of possibility.
Yes.
And I can feel that everything I'm saying makes total sense to you, and also that there's some room that you're sensing to explore this where I'm pointing.
Yes.
Would you say, Cece?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's yes. I actually, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure that the yoga isn't somehow helping as well. That I can.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
And I said to somebody the day before yesterday that it's almost as if I can feel, and the body knows the score. I can almost feel parts of my body just releasing something. I've been doing it now for since the beginning of this 11 weeks, and I'm not sure that it's just being able to be more. I think at the end of that 45 minutes, you talk about not only the body being more flexible, but the mind. And some kind of just small, subtle shift around, the tinnitus.
I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I've been meaning to say for days, but what I mean to say and what gets said, two different things. But since you're bringing it up, I want to emphasize two things before we close out for this week. One is, let's start with the yoga that you're mentioning. I cannot tell you how important it is, in my view, no matter how old you are, no matter what shape your body is in, to get down on the floor, even if you need help and cranes in order to get you down on the floor, up off the floor, but to get down on the floor or even in bed and do very simple mindful yoga. That this is like, and the older I get, the more, and I've been doing it for well over 50 years, the more important the more importance it takes on a multiplicity of different levels, the least interesting of which is the body. But I would love that you've brought that element of it up, and that there's really no separation, whether it's involving the tinnitus or any other aspect of life, that there's no separation between that and the meditation.
No,
And the
absolutely.
other thing, so you would agree with me about that?
You know what, I think I'd agree, because actually as well, at the beginning of the lockdown, I think it was I have a regular meditation practice, but I think that 45 minutes on the mat somehow gave me more comfort and resilience than sitting.
Yeah, and I want to make sure everybody understands that the meditation practice does not equal sitting, or the best meditation practice, or the most regal, or the most transcendent, or it does not equal sitting. It equals awareness, and the body door, and especially working with the body at what you discover to be its limits, the boundaries, so to speak. And then you don't believe what your mind says about the limits, but you're exploring in the laboratory of the stretching itself or the lifting. So you're cultivating strength, balance, and flexibility and mindfulness all at the same time, of mind, of body, of heart. There's something about it that, I don't understand, but it's unbelievably powerful, and is as much a part of the practice as sitting meditation or doing body scans or anything else. So
And
just to recommend it to everybody else on this call is something where, as I said, I've been doing it for well over 50 years. And, the older I get, the more I love it, and the more it sets the tone for my day, because I tend to do it as soon as I wake up.
that's when I've been doing it. And I also have to just add that it doesn't matter about your age, because I'm about to go into your decade. So it makes no difference whatsoever.
Well, this is very helpful to other people, and I hope, Cece, that it's also been helpful to you. I want to just say two more things. One is the other thing about the early morning waking up in bed, and before you even get out of bed, whether it's to do yoga or whatever, are we making time, so to speak, to not jump out of bed and get going with our day, but to actually ask the question, am I awake? And then finish the job, so to speak, not by
Yeah.
trying to get anywhere, but by actually realizing what waking up actually is. And a very powerful way to do it, not necessarily a body scan, but we've done this a few times, putting your attention in your hands, for instance,
Mhm.
for a period of time, then putting your attention in your feet, taking it out of your hands and putting it in your feet, then maybe left hand and left foot, then maybe right hand and right foot, then maybe the whole body. You can do this in like 5 minutes, makes a huge difference if you incorporate it into your, life on an everyday basis. And then
Mm.
again, the theme from the very beginning is no separation between practice and life itself. But these kinds of ways of instantiating embodied wakefulness and mindfulness are incredibly powerful. The last thing I want to mention is that a woman who has tinnitus at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, whose name is just not coming to me at the moment, maybe a decade ago, developed mindfulness-based tinnitus reduction
Mm.
based on MBSR. And you can Google it, and you're probably rewriting the curriculum in your own experience. So I'm not saying you need this, but just to say that other people that I know have found the practice to actually be liberative when you get beyond having to force it to be either or. It's either here or it's gone. If it's gone, then yippee, I'm saved.
Mm.
But to go beyond that kind of dualism, then there's a certain kind of peace that I think you're already discovering on your own.
Could you just say who that was again, John, please?
I can't say who it was because I'm blanking on her name at the moment.
Jennifer Gans and mindfulness-based tinnitus stress reduction.
Oh, did you just
Chat.
Google it?
I
Or
just
is that,
Googled it, yeah.
what's her name?
Jennifer Gans.
Jennifer Gans. Yeah. And she's wonderful. She's wonderful. I haven't talked to her in 10 years, but Jennifer Gans, UCSF. And is it called mindfulness-based?
Mindfulness-based tinnitus stress reduction.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so you're not alone. And thank you, Cece. Really,
Thank you.
none
Thank
of
you.
us are
Thank you.
alone.
Thank you, Soren. Thank you, John. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you look at the chat. There's various other people who are working with the same condition and have shared various things. So you can hopefully see that in the chat and save it there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think we're there, John.
We're here. Let's call it here.
Sorry.
But yeah, we're here in this time zone. It's called 3:15 instead of 3 o'clock. What difference does that make?
So thank you, Sinead. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Cece. I will unmute everyone in a moment and we can say our goodbyes. Have a wonderful weekend and we'll see you on Monday.
Yep,
Anything else, John?
that's it. We'll see you on Monday. And have a
Hasta luego, gracias.
have a wonderful weekend.
Everybody.
Have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Vamos, hasta luego.
Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.
Hasta luego.
Feel the love. Thank you again.
Hey, everyone. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you very much. Love you.
Thomas.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye, John.
Thank you, John.
Joseph, happy birthday.
Hey, Joseph.
Joseph, happy birthday, Joseph.
Joseph.
Oh.
Well.